This is a story of my favorite baseball play that had absolutely no postseason implications. Crazy things happen in baseball all the time, but this play was the craziest one that I saw live. It also involved my favorite team, the Texas Rangers, in arguably their most memorable year, 2010. The play itself is a joy to watch, and the play by play call is brilliant. So many things came together to make this my favorite. So let's back up, and I'll give you a bit of background on each of those things so that you can fully appreciate it. Part 1, the 2010 Texas Rangers. From their move to Texas in 1972 until the 2010 season, the Texas Rangers, more often than not, were irrelevant. Their only playoff appearances in those 38 seasons came in a 4-year stretch from 1996 to 1999, where they reached the postseason 3 times. In 96, they faced off against the New York Yankees, and behind home runs by Juan Gonzalez and Dean Palmer, they won the franchise's first playoff game. But that was the end of their playoff success for a long while. They lost the next 3 games of the series, and then were swept out of the ALDS in both 98 and 99, facing the Yankees each time and getting outscored 23-2 in those 6 games. As Y2K began, the franchise playoff record stood at 1-9, and it would remain frozen there for the next decade. In the middle of that decade, the Rangers made history, appointing 28-year-old John Daniels to the general manager job. He became the youngest GM in the history of Major League Baseball. Daniels made a few questionable moves early in his GM tenure, trading away Alfonso Soriano, Adrian Gonzalez, and starting pitcher Chris Young. But in 2007, he made what would become the best trade in franchise history. John Schuerholz, the Atlanta Braves GM since 1990, was in his last season as the team's GM and was in a playoff race with the Mets. Desperately wanting to make the postseason, he agreed to send his top 3 prospects, plus 2 others, to the Rangers for first baseman Mark Teixeira and relief pitcher Ron Mayhew. The big name coming back for Texas was catcher Jared Saltalamacchia. One scout praised the trade for the Rangers, saying they took one good draft pick, Teixeira in 2001, and turned it into 4 good years of Teixeira, plus 5.5 years of Saltalamacchia, plus, quote, whatever they get out of those other guys. Well, 3 of those 4 other guys, Matt Harrison, Neftali Feliz, and Elvis Andrus, became All-Stars, and Feliz was Rookie of the Year in 2010. So the Rangers were closing out 1 decade of futility and were entering a new one with a promising outlook. And that's when they were dealt 2 crushing blows. First, owner Tom Hicks and Hicks Sports Group were deeply in debt and were forced to sell the team to a group led by Chuck Greenberg and Nolan Ryan. However, the team's creditors opposed the sale and sued, causing the ownership mess to spill into the season. Hicks Sports Group filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in May 2010, and as the team headed towards the 2010 MLB trade deadline, there was uncertainty about who the new owners would even be. The Greenberg-Ryan duo was now opposed by a team of Jim Crane and Mark Cuban. The second blow, if you will, came in March 2010 when it was announced that manager Ron Washington had tested positive for cocaine use during the prior season. But despite the distractions, the Rangers opened 2010 with an exciting win over the Blue Jays. After being no-hit for 6 innings, the Rangers scored 3 in the 7th and entered the 9th down 1. Nelson Cruz doubled in the tying run, and then the aforementioned Saltalamacchia drove home David Murphy for the walk-off win. Unfortunately for the Rangers and for Salty, that would account for half of his RBI total for the whole season, and the only RBI that year as a Ranger. Part 2, the catching situation. Saltalamacchia was supposed to be the Rangers' catcher of the future when they acquired him from Atlanta in 2007, but he struggled, most notably with strikeouts. In April 2009, he set the MLB record for most consecutive games with a strikeout for a position player, with 28. That record has since been broken by Adam Dunn and Aaron Judge, but those guys are extreme power hitters. Salty was most definitely not. After his walk-off hit to open the 2010 season, he was sent to the disabled list. He made some starts at AAA Oklahoma City, but then something strange happened. He developed a case of the yips, becoming unable to consistently throw the ball back to the pitcher. In one Redhawks game, he had 12 throws back to the pitcher that either fell short or sailed into center field. 5 of the 12 came in the first inning. While Salty was stuck in AAA, the Rangers got by with a catching trio of journeyman Matt Trainer, husband of Olympic volleyball gold medalist Misty May Trainer, and youngsters Taylor Teagarden and Max Ramirez. As the 2010 trade deadline approached, the Rangers had a commanding lead in the AL West and were poised for their first postseason appearance in over a decade, but they needed an ace and they needed a catcher. On June 30th, they solved their catcher problem, finding a trade partner in the San Francisco Giants. The Giants were in fourth place in their division, and superstar prospect Buster Posey had burst onto the scene, making their veteran catcher expendable. So the Rangers traded for 35-year-old Bengie Molina. Now, Bengie is part of an amazing baseball family. He's the oldest of three brothers, all of whom were major leaguers and all of whom were catchers. Entering the 2010 season, they had each won a World Series, and middle brother Jose had won two. They were above average defenders, but one quality none of the brothers possessed was speed. Bengie especially was remarkably slow and widely considered the slowest player in baseball. At the time he was traded to Texas, he had 3 stolen bases and 6 triples in over 13 career games. And honestly, I'm not even sure how he had that many. Here he is in action.
Little tapper. Oh my goodness. Nolasco air mails it to the tarp. Molina's coming home. Cantu's throw is in time. He's out. How about that? That's a great heads-up play by Jorge Cantu. Anyone but Molina would have been safe.
Ironically, the Rangers in 2010 had developed 2 celebratory hand signals, the claw and the antlers, which were used after a player did something involving power or speed, respectively. After doubling to the gap, for example, a player would stand on second and give the claw in the direction of the dugout. And after stretching a single into a double, he'd give the antlers. Molina had decent power, so it wasn't uncommon for him to give the claw, but needless to say, he almost never gave the antlers. Part 3. The Broadcast Booth. On the radio side, Rangers fans have been spoiled. Eric Nadel joined the radio booth in 1982 alongside Mark Holtz. When Holtz moved to TV in 95, Nadel became the lead voice and has remained there ever since. I know exactly 0 people who don't absolutely love Nadel, and that's so rare for a broadcaster. In 2014, Nadel won the MLB Hall of Fame's Ford Frick Award for excellence in broadcasting. On the TV side, however, things have been a little different, and opinions vary widely among Rangers fans regarding which broadcasters they like and which ones they don't. The 2010 team of Josh Lewin and Tom Grieve was no exception. Now, Tom Grieve is known as Mr. Ranger. He was taken by the Washington Senators in the first round of the 1966 MLB draft, and when the Senators moved to Texas in '72, Grieve was on the inaugural Rangers team. After his playing career ended, he joined the Rangers front office, eventually serving as the team's general manager from 1984 to 1994. And when that stint ended, he became the TV color commentator. Grieve was not the best Rangers player by any means, nor was he the best general manager, and the same can be said about his broadcasting. His calm demeanor and old school style were a bit different than most color commentators, but because of his devotion to the Rangers organization, he's beloved by pretty much all fans, especially older fans who knew him from his earlier days. But his subdued style, when paired with most play-by-play commentators, usually made for a kind of boring broadcast. But in 2002, the Rangers brought in Josh Lewin for play-by-play. And if there's one thing people can agree on about Josh, is that his broadcasts aren't boring. He brought excitement to every game, and he peppered in lots of pop culture references. It was an odd pairing, and opinions about Lewin varied greatly. I, for one, absolutely loved Lewin. My dad, who really adored Tom Grieve, once made the perfect comment about the Lewin-Grieve pair. He said Lewin provided the energy for the broadcast and was able to engage with Grieve in a way that brought the best out of him. He made Grieve a better colorman. Some fans thought Lewin was a little too excited, crossing over the line into silliness, but no matter where you stand on that issue, no one can deny that he was great in the game's big moments. And in the play we'll eventually watch, his call is great, building the excitement of the play and perfectly expressing the wonder the viewing public was experiencing along with him. And in this play, even Grieve can't help but join in, giggling at what he just witnessed. Part 4. The Cycle. In the history of Major League Baseball, there have been 302 no-hitters thrown. That's between 2 and 3 per season. Only slightly more common, occurring 332 times, is a player hitting for the cycle. That means that in a single game, a batter gets a single, a double, a triple, and a home run. It's uncommon for a number of reasons. First, it requires a 4-hit game, and those aren't common. Even baseball's all-time hits leader, Pete Rose, had a 4-hit game in only 2% of the games he played. And for most hitters, it's more rare than that. Second, it requires that all the hits be of different types. This greatly reduces the likelihood of a cycle because different types of hits don't occur with the same frequency. Roughly 2/3 of the hits during the 2010 season were singles, 20% were doubles, 11% were home runs. That leaves only 2% that were triples, and that's where most cycles fall short. The triples leader in 2010 only had 14 during the season, or one every 11 or 12 games. And the third reason cycles are so rare is that they require the batter to display both power to hit a double and a home run and speed to hit a triple. Most triples come from the little fast guys, many of whom don't display much power. And most home runs come from the big strong guys who aren't as quick on the base paths. So in summary, to get a cycle, you generally need to have power, speed, and you got to have a little luck that it all comes together on the same night. Carlos Gonzalez, or Cargo, is the type of player that you think of when you think of hitting for the cycle. In 2010, playing for the Rockies, he had 34 homers and 26 stolen bases. He also had 9 triples, one of which came against the Cubs in a July 2010 game. In that game, he also singled and doubled, needing only a home run to complete the cycle. And in the bottom of the ninth, with the game tied, he homered on the first pitch he saw, getting the cycle for himself and the walk-off win for Colorado. Another thing about the cycle is that it's so fluky. Some of baseball's greatest players never did it, while many who have done it have had very lackluster careers. For example, in the same month that Gonzalez hit for the cycle against the Cubs, utility infielder Kelly Johnson did the same while playing for the Diamondbacks. But this isn't a story about Carlos Gonzalez or Kelly Johnson. It's about the 2010 Texas Rangers. It's about Josh Lewin and Tom Grieve, and it's about the third player who hit for the cycle in July 2010. Part 5. The play. On July 16th, 2010, the Rangers played the second of a 4-game series at Fenway Park. They had beaten Boston the previous night, taking a 6-0 lead in the first inning, thanks in part to a 2-run homer by newly acquired Bengie Molina. In this Friday night game, the Rangers struck first again, putting 2 runs on the board in the first inning. In the second, Molina singled with 1 out, and he moved to second on a wild pitch. Chris Davis then singled to right, but with Molina's speed, or lack thereof, he was stopped at third. A strikeout and groundout ended the scoreless half inning. Boston scored 2 in the bottom half to tie the game. In the fourth, Molina doubled, with the ball glancing off of J.D. Drew's glove in right field. However, he was once again stranded at third to end the inning. Adrian Beltre homered to put Boston ahead 3-2 in the bottom of the fourth, but the Rangers broke it open in the fifth. They loaded the bases for David Murphy, who walked to bring in the tying run. Then Molina stepped up and put the game away, hitting a grand slam to straightaway center and giving the Rangers a commanding 7-3 lead. Molina stepped up to the plate one more time that night, leading off the 8th inning against pitcher Ramon Ramirez. To this point, he had singled, doubled, and homered, needing only a triple for the cycle. In his nearly 5,000 career plate appearances, he had tripled 5 times, 1 time for every 1,000 trips to the plate. 0.1%. It felt ludicrous to even hope for such a thing, and I remember watching the at-bat, thinking how funny it would be if... So that's enough setup. Here in all its glory is my favorite baseball play. Please enjoy.
With a single. Curtis Granderson sliding in to make it 5-4. There goes Bengie again to center field. Now could this be a triple? Come on, Bengie, get going, kiddo. You got the cycle, big guy. Get there. He did it. Pigs have flown in Boston, Massachusetts.
They're jumping up and down in the dugout too, boy.
Just got to make sure they don't give it an error out there in center. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is the 6th career triple for Bengie Molina and his first ever cycle, and the most unlikely thing to have happened maybe in Ranger history. If they scored a triple, and now we learn they have.
That's a triple. Wow. Bengie, I think, wanted to stop at second, but he said, I gotta go now.
Please enjoy. Part 6, the aftermath. After running full speed for 14 and a half seconds, covering 270 feet, Molina was lifted from the game with a sore quad. On his blog, he said that he had 55 text messages waiting for him when he got home that night. He also said, "I will never forget this moment for the rest of my life." In early July, the Rangers got their ace, trading for Cliff Lee. And at the trade deadline, the Rangers' Saltalamacchia era ended as the catcher was traded to the Red Sox. While the team was making their playoff run, the bankruptcy proceedings continued. The team was put up for auction in August, and the Greenberg-Ryan pair outbid Crane and Cuban. The Rangers clinched the division in late September, and it was one of the last calls Josh Lewin made for their team. They let him go following the season, and 10 years later, I'm still upset about it. But the Rangers exercised their demons, their playoff demons, beating the Rays in the division series and then knocking off the Yankees to win the AL pennant. Neftali Feliz struck out Alex Rodriguez for the final out, which was cathartic for us long-suffering Rangers fans. On the National League side, the Giants, after trading for Molina, had gone on a tear in the second half of the year and captured the NL crown. Because he had played for both teams during 2010, Bengie Molina entered the Fall Classic knowing he was guaranteed a second World Series ring. He just didn't know what team it would be for. Unfortunately, it was San Francisco, as they beat the Rangers 4-1. It was his final season, and the following year his brother Yadier would capture his second World Series ring, but that's a story we don't talk about anymore.